Imagine building a family empire so tightly controlled that it looks unbreakable from the outside, only to watch it collapse, not from one dramatic betrayal, but from silence, distance, and truth. This is not just the story of a marriage ending. This is the unraveling of power, manipulation, and control, where every phone call, every tear, and every quiet decision exposes how one man lost everything he thought he owned, and how the people he tried to rule finally walked away. Welcome back to Coco Gossip, where secrets never stay buried, and power never disappears quietly. What is happening right now in Flagstaff is no longer rumor or speculation. It is the sound of a dynasty collapsing in real time. And the deeper we dig, the more uncomfortable the truth becomes. Because this story is not about romance or jealousy or even money. At its core, this is about control, loyalty, and what happens when a man builds his entire identity on obedience and suddenly finds himself alone. Sources close to the Brown family say the atmosphere around Coyote Pass has shifted from tense to explosive, the kind of silence that feels heavier than shouting. The land that was once sold to the wives as a dream has become a reminder of failure, an empty stretch of dirt with no houses, no laughter, and no future. Cody Brown spends hours staring at it, walking the boundaries like a general surveying a battlefield he already lost. He tells himself the same story on repeat, that he was betrayed, that he sacrificed everything, that he demanded loyalty because loyalty was the foundation of the family. But what he refuses to acknowledge is that loyalty without care is just control, and control always creates resentment. Inside the massive Flagstaff house, the mood has been described as suffocating. Insiders say the walls are stacked with unsold inventory, expensive art, collectibles, jewelry, and boxes of failed dreams. Once framed as investments, now serving as silent witnesses to financial strain. With Christine gone, with Janelle gone, with Meri emotionally disconnected, the family pot has dried up. And for the first time in decades, Cody Brown cannot delegate blame to another wife because there is only one left. Robin, the woman he trusted, the woman he defended, the woman he built rules for, the woman he reshaped the entire family around. And that trust became his entire world. He isolated himself, believing that as long as he had Robin, he had won, that he had proven everyone wrong. But isolation does not create intimacy. It magnifies cracks. And while Cody obsessed over past grievances, replaying old arguments and reliving perceived betrayals, something was quietly shifting under his roof. Insiders say Robin's behavior changed, subtly at first. Frequent trips, unexplained absences, long hours on her phone, guarded conversations taken outside, away from Cody. She claimed she was working, trying to revive old business ideas, trying to help financially. Cody believed her, because believing her meant believing his sacrifices were justified. He saw it as loyalty in action, and failed to notice the emotional distance growing between them. While he spiraled in paranoia, Christine Brown was doing the unthinkable. She was thriving, not surviving, not hiding, but glowing, living openly, loving freely with David Woolley, a man whose quiet confidence stood in stark contrast to Cody's constant need for validation. Every photo, every smile, and every public appearance chipped away at Cody's ego. But the real threat was closer than he realized, because the line between his sanctuary and Christine's new life was about to disappear. Insiders allege that Robin's trips to Utah were not strictly business-related, that during one of those trips, she connected with someone from David's extended family, a man removed enough to feel safe, yet close enough to represent escape. Someone who listened instead of lectured, who offered attention instead of authority. And whether emotional or physical, the connection mattered, because it shattered the narrative Cody relied on, that Robin was different, that she was loyal, that she was the reward for his suffering. The irony is brutal. The woman who entered the family amid chaos, now allegedly searching for an exit as the structure collapses. The turning point came when David Woolley became aware of the situation, not through gossip, but through family conversation, a relative sharing happiness, showing photos, unaware of the significance until recognition set in. David understood
Immediately what this meant and what silence would allow to continue. He faced a decision: protect privacy or confront truth, and chose the latter, not out of malice, but principle. He reached out directly to Cody Brown, man to man, not as a rival, but as someone delivering a reality Cody was not prepared to face. When the message arrived, Cody dismissed it as manipulation until evidence followed. Messages, photos, words that could not be explained away. In that moment, the foundation of Cody's identity cracked. The loyal wife narrative dissolved, years of justification unraveled, and the weight of his own choices came crashing down on him. The man who demanded loyalty above love was now confronting betrayal that mirrored his own treatment of others. He returned home not in rage, but in cold clarity, confronting Robin not with accusations, but with proof. And when the denial did not come, when tears were replaced with distance, the truth settled in. This was not an impulsive mistake. This was a symptom of a broken partnership. Robin's response, according to insiders, was not remorse, but resentment. She did not apologize, she explained. She spoke of loneliness, of exhaustion, of living with a man trapped in bitterness. She reframed his sacrifices as failures, his control as abandonment. And in that exchange, Cody realized something devastating. He had built a system that worked only as long as there were other wives to absorb detention. Without them, the dynamic collapsed, and he was no longer the prize. The argument did not end in reconciliation or promises. It ended in separation. Cody left the house, retreating to the trailer he once mocked, now reduced to a symbol of exile, sitting alone on the land that never became home, realizing that every bridge he burned had once been a lifeline. And while he sat there, processing humiliation and loss, another instinct surfaced, the instinct to regain control. And when narcissistic control collapses, it seeks a new target. And Cody's mind turned to Meri, the wife he had discarded, the wife he believed still vulnerable to hope, unaware that she was quietly rebuilding her life in Utah, finding stability, independence, and possibly love. A rumor reached Cody of a new man in Meri's life, a name that triggered history, a name associated with Robin's past, a name Cody had framed for years as danger. And that was all he needed. He did not confront Meri directly. Instead, he made a calculated move. He reached for the one connection that could still wound her, Leon, her child, and framed concern as protection, fear as responsibility. He spoke carefully, invoking trauma, invoking safety, planting doubt. He did not lie outright. He reframed reality using fear as leverage. And Leon acted out of love, driving to Parowan, believing they were preventing harm, only to confront a situation far different than described. And in that confrontation, the manipulation became clear. Words meant to protect became weapons meant to divide. And when Leon realized the truth, when patterns aligned and Cody's timing exposed his motives, the bond he tried to break instead began to strengthen among those he underestimated: Christine, Janelle, Meri, and their children. The very people he believed disloyal were now united, not by rebellion, but by clarity. Back in Flagstaff, insiders report moving trucks near the house, not chaotic, but methodical. Robin preparing her exit, securing assets, ensuring stability. Cody watched from a distance, unable to stop the dismantling of the life he orchestrated. The patriarch reduced to spectator, the land empty, the house hollow, the legacy undone. And this is where the story truly tightens, because what comes next is not just divorce or fallout, but reckoning. The realization that loyalty demanded without empathy creates fear, not love, and fear never lasts. And as cameras continue to roll, capturing the quiet aftermath, viewers are left watching a man confront the truth he avoided for decades. that authority without compassion builds nothing that lasts, and that the empire he fought so hard to control was already crumbling from within.
As the dust settled from that first implosion, the real consequences begin to unfold quietly. And this is where the story becomes far more unsettling, because collapse does not happen in a single explosion. It happens in slow motion, through phone calls, silences, and decisions made when no cameras are around. Cody believed exile would bring reflection, but isolation only amplified his worst instincts. Alone in the trailer on Coyote Pass, surrounded by unfinished dreams and unpaid promises, he replayed every perceived betrayal in his mind, convincing himself he was still the victim, that everyone else had failed him, not the other way around. The land outside his window stretched empty, a constant reminder that leadership without follow-through builds nothing tangible. While the house on the hill slowly emptied, boxes disappearing, trucks coming and going without his permission, Robin was no longer asking, she was informing. No longer negotiating, she was executing a plan. Insiders describe her demeanor as focused, detached, efficient. The emotional caretaker role she once played vanished, replaced by someone calculating her future. The marriage that once thrived on shared enemies had run out of villains, and without the chaos of sister wives to manage, the cracks between Cody and Robin were impossible to ignore. The silence between them was heavier than their past arguments, and while Cody told himself this was temporary, that loyalty would return once the storm passed, the reality was harsher. Robin was done surviving someone else's rage. She was preparing to move forward, and Cody could feel the power slipping away, not in one dramatic moment, but through small humiliations, unanswered messages, missed dinners, legal conversations that excluded him. This loss of control triggered his deepest fear, irrelevance. And when that fear surfaced, he did what he always did. He looked for someone else to blame, someone else to destabilize. Because if he could not rule his own life, he could at least disrupt someone else's peace. His attention returned to Meri, not out of affection, but opportunity. He convinced himself that she was fragile, that her independence was temporary, that her happiness was misguided and dangerous, and he told himself that intervening was justified, that he was protecting the family narrative, protecting history, protecting trauma. But in truth, he was protecting his ego. Meri had moved beyond him, and that was unforgivable. Her life in Parowan was no longer defined by waiting or longing. She had built something stable: the inn, the community, the routine, the quiet confidence that comes from self-sufficiency. And rumors of a new relationship unsettled Cody deeply, not because of concern, but because it shattered the final illusion that he was still central to her story. The name attached to this new man carried symbolic weight, and Cody weaponized that symbolism expertly, calling Leon, framing fear as responsibility, invoking the past like a warning siren, knowing exactly which emotional buttons to press. Leon responded out of love and concern, stepping into a situation already poisoned by half-truths and emotional manipulation. The confrontation at the inn was painful, not explosive, but devastating in its quiet tension. Words spoken that echoed old wounds, accusations that mirrored Cody's voice without realizing it. And when Leon left, confused and hurt, believing they had done the right thing, the truth slowly began to surface, because manipulation cannot survive transparency. And when Leon reached out to Christine, the pieces finally aligned. Christine had distance, perspective, and nothing left to lose. She spoke plainly, explaining the situation in Flagstaff, the alleged betrayal, the isolation, the pattern repeating itself. And in that moment, Leon realized they had been used, not to protect, but to punish. And that realization cut deeper than anger. It brought clarity, and clarity has consequences. Relied on for decades began unraveling among the people who once believed it. The wives he called disloyal now shared information, supported one another, and quietly closed ranks, not in rebellion, but in self-preservation. Cody had unintentionally united them against the very behavior that once kept them divided. Back in Flagstaff, the legal reality was setting in. Divorce consultations, asset discussions, property evaluations, the fantasy of control replaced by paperwork and deadlines. Coyote Pass, once envisioned as a shared legacy, was now a liability, a stagnant expense, a symbol of indecision and pride. The land was not paid off, not developed, not useful, and now subject to division, scrutiny, and loss. Cody paced its boundaries, still talking about future plans, but insiders say the conviction is gone. The gestures feel hollow, the words recycled from a dream no one else believes in anymore. Cameras capture him alone, gesturing to empty lots, describing visions that never materialized, while the women who once stood beside him have moved on to real lives with real momentum. Robin continues to prepare her exit, carefully crafting a narrative of endurance, positioning herself as someone who tried until the end. The loyal wife left with no choice, and whether or not the allegations are ever publicly confirmed, the shift is undeniable. Her focus is forward, not back. And Cody senses it. He feels the abandonment he once dismissed in others and now must face himself. The show that once centered him now frames him as background, a cautionary figure wandering through the wreckage of his own making. Producers are no longer capturing authority, they are documenting aftermath, and the audience sees it too. The difference between leadership and control, the cost of ego masquerading as principle. Christine and Janelle watch from a distance, not with glee, but relief, grateful they exited before collapse turned to implosion. Meri rebuilds quietly, reclaiming identity piece by piece, and Leon reconnects with clarity, setting firmer boundaries, no longer willing to carry the weight of someone else's unresolved anger. And Cody remains at the center of the storm he created, still searching for loyalty, still demanding validation, still unable to see that love cannot be enforced and respect cannot be coerced. The empire did not fall because people betrayed him, it fell because it was built on fear, obligation, and imbalance. And when those foundations cracked, everything else followed. This is not the end of the story, but it is the point of no return, because once truth replaces narrative, there is no going back, only forward into consequences, accountability, and the uncomfortable silence that follows when control finally slips away. In the end, what destroyed the family was never divorce or disloyalty, it was control disguised as leadership, fear mistaken for love, and an empire built on obedience instead of trust. When the silence settled, the truth was impossible to ignore. Everyone who chose freedom found peace, and the man who demanded loyalty was left alone, facing the one thing he could never dominate, the consequences of his own choices.